Hello everyone, welcome back. So what I'm going to do today in this video, I'm just going to talk about urban survival and escaping a city. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I've been doing these prepping 101 videos, and I don't like the term prepping, because it doesn't really mean anything to me. But what we were talking about, I don't know, like yesterday or the day before, was if you find yourself in a city, in that urban location, it's not a good place. It's absolutely not. They're not the best places to be when everything goes south. Now, if you're looking inward to the United Kingdom, these things are becoming increasingly likely. Literally, day by day, these things are becoming more increasingly likely. We've seen wild stuff already happen in the United Kingdom. We've seen cities closed down. We've seen checkpoints we've seen illegal checkpoints by civilians checking people's race. That's happened in the United Kingdom. We've seen violence. We've seen more violence. We've seen communities broken down. Now, what I just want to talk about is if for whatever reason, right, you do not first of all, evacuating the city when you need to is the right thing. But I totally understand some people may think that they don't need to evacuate the city. Then for whatever reasons, they may stay in a city. They may need to go into a city. There's lots of reasons why you would find yourself in a city. Now, these topics are so nuanced. There's so many what if this, what if that, what if this, and articulations. It's very difficult to you can't cover everything. It's virtually impossible to cover everything. So what this video is going to be, of course, this is no substitute for going and doing an actual training course. But what this video is going to be, what I want this to be more of, is more of talking points and thought points for you guys. So these things can happen really quickly. You find yourself in a concrete jungle. And I think most people will find themselves in a concrete jungle. If you guys have been following me for a while, I used to do live streams. I've got one somewhere. I should have probably had it with me. I used to give away urban survival kits, like a couple of years ago. I used to come on the live stream and I used to say, right, for the top, when I was on TikTok, I used to say, right, the top gifter will get like an urban survival kit. I never used to make it. I used to lose money on those. But what I wanted people to understand is this image, right, of going out into the wilderness with your baked beans and your tinned food and your little ferro rod and your purification tablets. It's a fantasy, guys. It really is a fantasy. People are going to be in urban survival situations. And I'm going to talk about, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little bit of talk about urban survival when a city shuts down and how this is more or less inevitable in the United Kingdom. Do you know what? It's not inevitable. It happens in the United Kingdom. I think, was it last year or the year before in Har Hills in Leeds? The whole city was closed down. They were bringing tires onto the streets and setting fire to tires so the emergency services couldn't get past. They closed that, these places get closed down. So I'm going to talk about urban survival. We're going to talk about, I'm going to explore a little bit about one of the most likely things that I feel most people will be in. And that's what happens if you're trying to leave a city, you're in a car and the road's blocked. That's what we're going to talk about. Of course, there's so many nuances to this. There's so many what ifs, what if this, what if that, what if I'm on my own. I totally get that. This is just going to be more of talking points because no two scenarios are going to be the same. And the only real way to understand this is to do this through experience, right? The other day on the live stream, I was talking about this and somebody on the chat said, Sean, as soon as one of these things happens, everything will be closed down. And what I said is actually, no, you've probably got 3 to 6 hours at a minimum. Like if you can get out within that first 3 hours, you are absolutely golden. You're gone. There's going to be no extra traffic. 6, 12, 24 hours, that's when the things start to build up, because what you've got to understand is once the trigger event happens, not everybody's going to know straight away, right? People are going to go home. They're going to come home from work. They're going to talk to their friends. They're going to talk to their families. And then they're going to mobilize. And then they're going to go out on the street. So the next day, 24 hours, absolutely. But that initial phase, that's when you want to get out. So always avoid conflict. Avoid these places as you can. So urban survival, it's not about bunkers and bug out bags filled with apocalypse stuff or waiting for some end of day scenario. It's about keeping your head, staying human, and making smart decisions when the system around you fails. And this is the most likely scenario, guys. Really, honestly, I believe thousands of people very soon are going to be in these urban survival scenarios, right? And you're going to have to escape a city. So these things often begin quickly. A strange alert on your phone, lights flickering, sirens in the distance. You don't really know what's happened. But for whatever scenario, the scenario, it could be a million and one things, right? The grid fails, there's been sabotage, Wi-Fi's gone, you know, all your electrics have gone. Rumors are swirling, you know, people are trying to talk, try and figure out what's going on. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. It could be a million and one things, ways that this unfolds. Now, sometimes chaos arrives before the noise. Sometimes the noise comes first. In recent years in the UK, we have seen tensions boil over, protests turn to riots, grievances met on the streets. Only this week, was it this week? This week, yeah, this week. Stabbings in school, children now carrying knives. We've seen peaceful demonstrations turn violent. We've seen people every year in London, the Notting Hill Carnival, right? They barricade the door, they barricade their shops up. Barricades go up. Sometimes you'll get sirens, sometimes you'll get police, sometimes you won't. Remember, in Har Hills, in 2000 and what was it, 24, maybe 23? I think it was 24. The police didn't go in there. There's places in West Midlands where West Midlands police won't go in because, you know, they don't go in. If you guys can remember from the Southport riots, West Midlands police did not go into places in Birmingham, right? They just did not go in. They didn't police them. They just let them do what they wanted. I'm not making that up. That's the reality. So now you've got to consider that if you're in that place and you want to get out, it's not going to be a good day, right? It's absolutely not going to be a good day. So just, you know, and these things can happen, and they're not always going to happen when you know what, 9 times out of 10, these things are not going to happen when you're ready for them. In fact, they will nothing ever happens when you're ready for it. All right. So just imagine you step out of the supermarket, you've got your, you know, you've got your shopping or whatever. And one side of the road, you see a load of people. Now, you can either one of these is true, right? They could either have the Palestinian flags, Iranian flags, Somalian flags, whatever flags they are. These things happen, right? And they're happening more frequently now in the United Kingdom. Maybe the police will be there to meet them. Maybe they won't be. This is not hypothetical anymore if you live in the United Kingdom. This is real. These things really happen in the United Kingdom more frequently now, right? And you guys know why. I want to try and keep this video relatively short. As of this year, 2026, we are sitting on what many mainstream media articles and pundits and experts describe as a tinderbox. Ongoing anti-immigration protests, sporadic violence have flared up. Disorder in cities from London, Glasgow, Bristol, Newcastle, large marches drawing tens or hundreds of thousands of people. Police have been injured, hundreds of arrests. Reports from risk analysts warn that 2026 could see even more frequent disruptive riots and protests, fueled by polarization, economic strain, migration debates. Social media is amplifying all of this. And that's not even throwing in one of those trigger events we talked about previously. The spark could come from absolutely anywhere. It could. Literally, the spark could come from anywhere. So if my advice to everyone would always be to avoid conflict. You don't want to be in the way of that conflict. You don't. You want to think straight, move decisively, and act early. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk briefly. I'm just going to talk briefly about what to do. A couple of considerations if you guys find yourselves in I'm going to come on to a traffic jam, because I do think that's going to be one of the main I do think people will find themselves in traffic jams, and that's going to be a big thing, right? Nobody's going to evacuate. Well, they might do. Most people are going to evacuate by vehicle, right? That's going to be the main go-to, evacuation by vehicle. So what I think, in fact, you know what? I'll come onto the chat first. Let me jump onto the chat. I can see there's quite a lot of people on the chat. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Callum is saying, thoughts on Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain. I think he's fantastic. I hope he does well. I'm not sure how well he will do. Martin Goodman is saying, how will solar cell work with all the geoengineering blocking out the sun? Yeah, we've not had sun for when have we? I mean, we had sun today. I can't remember when we had it last before that. If not the Muslims, then the other grifters are pushing for a civil war. I think a civil war or a civil conflict in the United Kingdom right now, as we stand, it's pretty much inevitable. Some sort of civil unrest, civil war. I don't know. So look, guys, I'm just conscious that I'm coming back on at 8 o'clock to do my normal slot. So I want to try and get through this as quickly as possible. So being caught in a traffic jam during an emergency like civil unrest, riots, looting, flash mobs, sudden violence, it can turn a routine drive into a dangerous trap. There are a lot of scenarios. Like, I could keep going and not name them all, but I want to give you guys just a couple of key principles to think about. The 4 of them, basically. So the first one, imagine the scene, right? Imagine the scenario. You're trying to leave your town or city or whatever. You've not left early enough. And first of all, you've not left early enough. And what you and your family, you decide, right, okay, we need to leave this city. Okay, cool. First of all, when are you going to leave? What time of day? Now, there's a lot of different ideas on what time you leave the city. If you leave the city at nighttime, there's not going to be as many people around, naturally. However, there's going to be more unsavory people around, right? So if you get caught in a checkpoint at nighttime, it's going to be worse than if you get caught in a checkpoint in the daytime. Equally, if you go in the daytime, there's going to be a lot more traffic on the road, but you may blend into that traffic easier. So, there's a lot, a couple of things to think about, right? So if you're leaving and you're in a car or a vehicle, whatever, first of all, try and blend in with your vehicles, right? Don't have, and I'm going to come on to being the grey man in a minute, but if you're trying to evacuate a city, right? Don't have, in fact, I don't even know why people would have these, but these big 4x4s. I mean, obviously, if you're a lumberjack or you need it for work, absolutely fine. I don't know why people drive these as their personal vehicles. No idea. Zero idea. But if you've got one of these big 4x4s, huge off-road tires, you've got the tank tracks on the side, you've got the roof tent, you've got the bull bars, you've got the front and rear winch. What is that screaming out? Literally, what is that screaming out? It's screaming out, I've got some cool shit in here, and this vehicle was expensive. And guess what? As soon as you pull up to a checkpoint, yeah, all your cool stuff's gone. Urban survival is more about blending in. It's more about being seen and not being noticed, if that makes sense. You know, somebody can see you and not notice you. Somebody can see you and just discard, pass you on. Don't make eye contact. That's a good one. That's a good tip. Don't make eye contact with people. It pisses them off. But the scenario is we're trying to leave the city, right? And all of a sudden we find ourselves in a traffic jam. First thing, spot and plan an alternate route early, ahead of time. Don't wait until you're fully stuck. As soon as you start to notice unusual delays, maybe you get a social media alert about unrest, you know, you can see smoke in the distance, crowds gathering. You've got to have that level of situational awareness to think, right, okay, I'm going to do a U-turn and I'm not playing this game anymore. Check your surroundings. Look for if there's any nearby side roads. Remember, you know, not all side roads are safe. There may be a dead end. And if you're being followed by a dead end, it gives the word dead a new meaning. Who has paper maps? If you need paper maps in your car. We've already seen scenarios where in the United Kingdom, their civilian GPS, the emergency services civilian GPS, has been what's the word? Not hacked, but it's gone down. Basically, you know, it's gone down. It's gone down. So you've got to, if you're doing off-road driving, right? One of the things that they'll tell you is admit defeat early. Don't keep revving your engine and getting further stuck. All right. If the road ahead of you is closed, it's blocked, or it looks like there's an unusual amount of heavy traffic, don't play that game. Get off, move, go to an alternate route. Now, you need to understand, or at least think about, when it's safe to abandon your vehicle. You know, your vehicle can be a shield, locked doors, windows up, low profile. However, it can also become a tomb, right? It can become a tomb if you get surrounded. So if anybody's ex-military, when you go to, well, yeah, I think Northern Ireland's closed down now, but when you used to deploy to Northern Ireland, they used to show you this video, and the video was of two soldiers in a civilian vehicle, and a flash mob just comes around them. It's not a good outcome for them. So, you know, staying in your vehicle, yes, it provides you with some sort of protection. It absolutely does. However, if you're staying in your vehicle and the vehicle's static, it then could become a tomb, right? So every scenario is going to be different. You've just got to think, right, do I stay and potentially become a tomb? Or do I leave all my stuff in the vehicle? You know, I'm not coming back to that. That's gone now. And, and move on foot. There's a million different scenarios. You could become a tomb. You could be set on fire. You could have hostile police. You could have hostile protesters, hostile crowds. If the jam isn't moving and crowds are closing in aggressively, or you see people starting to smash other vehicles up, maybe it's the time to leave, right? Park quickly in a spot that's, helps you as best you can. Take your essentials, and I should probably talk about urban survival kits, but I'll do that in another video. I've talked about urban survival kits loads, all right? Grab your urban survival kit, your phone ID, phone chargers, anything that your immediate kit and equipment. And move, you can either move with the crowd or away from the crowd. So each scenario is going to be different. If you've ever been in one of these riots or a protest and you've been on the ground, unless they're searching for you, which 9 times out of 10 they're not going to be, the people are not looking for you. They're just going crackers. So do you know what? You go crackers as well and join the chant. Go with it. And then try and veer yourself off. try and tie your shoelace in a doorway. Whatever you do, don't panic. If you're out on your feet and there's big crowds, don't panic, because when people run, people will chase you. Don't run. Go with the crowd. Just go with it. If they're chanting "Free, Free Palestine," chant "Free, Free Palestine." If they're shouting "Tommy, Tommy, Tommy," shout "Tommy, Tommy, Tommy." What I'm getting at here is you need to blend in, right? You need to blend in with your surroundings. Now, there's also going to be, if there's checkpoints, right? You know, these checkpoints are going to be set up at natural, a good checkpoint. Who knows where they're going to be set up, right? Normally, you would set a checkpoint up at a natural choke point, right? Because the traffic's naturally funneling towards you. Now, gridlock at natural choke points and intersections and, all the rest of it, the traffic often worsens at those places, bridges, tunnels, roundabouts, where everyone's trying to converge to move on. So if you're approaching and it's jammed solid with people on foot or vehicles abandoned, guess what? It's a red flag and you need to move. It's potential for violence. Avoid driving into these scenarios, right? If you see one of these things, my friend did it when we was in France the other day, last month or whatever it was. So we're driving down this road, right, into into the migrant camp, and I've talked about this in other videos, but if any of you guys have been to these migrant camps in northern France, the ground is saturated with migrants, and it's quite intimidating, because these guys are walking around, groups of men, fighting age men, blankets. It just feels off. Anyway, my friend he said, no, stop here, don't go any further, just stop. I said, we can't stop. He said, just stop. Because he was a little bit excited. He didn't want to go any further. I was like, mate, we don't. Anyway, he said stop, and I listened to him because he was really struggling with his. I'm not going to get into it, right, guys? But sometimes you don't know how people are going to react in situations until they've been in situations, right? And he was really struggling. The last thing I wanted is to drive into a group of people and him having a panic attack in the car. So I pulled over. As soon as I pulled over, we started to get approached. And like these people just started coming out of bushes towards us. And these NGOs with the yellow vests on, they all started to approach us because we were a static vehicle. So don't stop. Excuse me. If you see these things building up, just do a U-turn. Do an absolute U-turn and go the other way. Doesn't matter. You're away from that scenario, right? You're not stopped. You're not in gridlock. You're not going to become in a tomb. And one of the final things I want to talk about, just remember, guys, this video is more of a talking points video, because every scenario is going to be different. Each and every scenario is going to be different. I can't sit here and say, do this, do this, do this, do this, because there's going to be so much nuance. And if I do say, do this, do this, do this, I may actually be telling you the wrong thing, because in your particular scenario, it may be a different sequence of events, and doing that thing may be wrong. So this is more about talking points. And I just want to talk about some considerations, if you find yourself in a traffic jam, right? And you're trying to leave a city. Avoid herd mentality. Now, I talk about this all the time. Just because everyone's running one direction doesn't mean that's the right direction. Try and avoid emotional reactions. Panic spreads like absolute wildfire everywhere. Everywhere, panic starts like wildfire. Remember what I talk about when I'm talking about active shooter? Stop, pause, react. Oh, but Sean, stop and pause are the same thing. No, they're not. You stop what you're doing, all right? You pause. You think, right, okay, I've stopped what I'm doing. I'm going to pause. Right, I'm going to look around. I'm going to find out what's happening, and then I'm going to react. Stop, pause, react. So panic is like wildfire. And once people start screaming and running or traffic or whatever, people people beeping horns, revving engines, whatever, trying to force their way through crowds, things will get worse. It will provoke attacks. Windows will go through. And then once people have started doing that, it will just escalate worse and worse. When I talk, when everybody, when all you guys in the chat, oh, I'm going to buy this weapon. No, don't. Avoid all conflict, right? Try and keep a low profile. If you do have to get out of the car, do not engage with anyone approaching you. Do not engage aggressively with anyone. Do not engage aggressively with anyone. I've got a friend who was in Baghdad. And there was some protest. He was totally white, and there was a massive protest. And if you're in Baghdad, things are going bad. And he had he was doing a close protection for I think a Chinese guy. For whatever reason, they found themselves in this bad place. No, it was CMP, Chinese media basically, and they found themselves in this bad situation, right? So my friend, he spoke limited Arabic. He just went straight to the crowd, smiled, shook the first guy's hand. Salam alaikum. He gave him a hug, smiling, shook his hand. Went to the next guy behind him, shook his hand over. And they made their way through this hostile crowd by smiling, shaking hands and hugging. He didn't use Kung Fu. He didn't use MMA or self-defense. He didn't use any weapons. He was quick thinking, right? Quick thinking. So you don't want to engage in violence. No, you shouldn't really be wanting to. You should be wanting to build spaceships, right? Nobody wants to, don't engage with anyone aggressively. Always smile. Smile, if you can, obviously call, emergency services, do what you can in that context, try and focus on facts over fear. Is there a threat directed to you, or is the threat directed elsewhere? And it's very difficult, like I just said, when I was in northern France, December, was it December? I can't remember. There was no direct threat to us, so we were fine. If there's no direct threat on you, you'll just go. You'll just be part of the traffic. But once you stop and you start becoming a target and you start identifying yourself as, oh, we're here, that's when things go wrong. Think about it. If a car's driving towards you, right, at 20 miles an hour, you look, maybe the people will look inside, maybe they won't. But by the time you've realized what you've seen, it's gone, right? So why stop? Martin Goodman is saying, in a modern city cut off by war or total government collapse with no external help, everything unravels quickly. Power, water, and sewage system fail within days due to lack of fuel and maintenance. Yes, they do. They absolutely do. This video, it's kind of, I want to give like the likely scenario for the United Kingdom. I don't think those things are coming to the United Kingdom. I don't think those things are coming to the United Kingdom. What I do think is coming to the United Kingdom is people stuck in cities trying to get out and getting caught in traffic jams. Now, those traffic jams there's a whole host of why those traffic jams could be emerging. There could be, somebody could be stacking bodies at the end of the street, or, somebody could be giving away free pizza, but those things will happen. And we've already seen roads being closed in the United Kingdom. We've already seen these things actually happen in real time here in the United Kingdom. So imagine if you was in one of those towns, cities, locations last year or whenever it was, when there was the riots, towns, cities, they get closed down and you can't get out. Trevor Pritchard is saying, always engage in self-defense if you can. No, Right, okay, Trevor, let me give you the scenario, right? Let me give you this scenario, right? I'll give you this scenario, literally the one I was just talking about, right? You're in a vehicle, you're leaving a town or a city, you're caught in traffic. A big gang of protesters come towards you, maybe 500, all right? Always engage in self-defense if you can. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to jump out and start doing like spinning? Like, are you going to go full Van Damme? 500 people? It's not going to end well for you. All right. I would say, listen, you guys can do what you want. You know, I'm giving you guys my advice. All right. My advice is play the gray man, avoid conflict, avoid violence each and every time. It doesn't do you well. You don't know who you're messing with. You want to get out of that city as quickly as possible. You don't want to get involved in melee with some guy over a piece of chicken. However, that does bring me nicely on to my next talking point, okay? So my next talking point is becoming the grey man. So the grey man basically refers to becoming as unremarkable, as nondescript, and as forgettable as possible to blend into your environment, right? So if you're, I don't know, if you're on a building site, right, put a hat on and a viz vest. You're going to blend in, right? If you're in, blending in. Because you don't want people to identify you for anything, for nothing good or for nothing bad. You want to blend in to the baseline. So what that means is, like I said, if you're on a building site, everybody's got a viz vest on and a hard hat. Go and put a viz vest on and a hard hat, and you will blend in more. Try and observe what the average person around you looks like, acts like in that specific location, then try and match it. When I go to a foreign country, I will always go to a foreign country with minimum kit, and I will always buy clothes locally from that country. Why? Well, if they see me walking around with, like, I don't know. What's that brand with the Carrymore? If they see me walking around in a Carrymore vest, like, oh, what, Carrymore? That's not a Ukrainian brand. Who's he? If they see me walking around with a what's the shop? Bila, like in a Bila with a t-shirt on that says Bila on it. It's like, oh yeah, he bought that in Ukraine. He must be Ukrainian. Always try and blend in. And that becomes your camouflage. You don't point out with those people. Obviously, avoid standing out, whether it's positively or negatively. If you look like one of these tactical guys, and all of my videos, I've never done a video where I recommend. Do you know that? They're somewhere. I've never done a video where I recommend buying all this tactical kit. You don't need it as a civilian. You don't need it. It's counterintuitive. So if you see someone walking past you, right, and he's got the sunglasses on, he's wearing his camouflage trousers, and he's got his big backpack, water bottles, and night vision goggles. All right, you got some nice kit. Come over here. He's going to stand out, right? If somebody walks past you with a small bum bag or a fanny pack, if you guys are in the US of A, a small bum bag, maybe a baseball cap, looking down, doesn't make eye contact, that person's going to walk past. You've got to play the grey man. Try and look like you're poor with nothing, right? You'll get left alone a lot more, a lot more. Don't look lost or clueless. Try and move, and I know this sounds weird. Try and move with purpose, but don't look confident or arrogant. Don't be, don't strut around looking at people. Don't make eye contact with people. If you make eye contact with people, they're gonna, they're more than likely gonna remember you. If you're the bad guys, right, and you're searching, and there's a crowd coming towards you, and you don't know what to do, you are going to be looking at people, and if you make eye contact with these people, they're going to grab you. I got held on the ground by some in Ukraine when in 2022. This kid, he just took a disliking to me. And I had a real hard time with this kid. He was armed. He just didn't like me, all right? I'd not become the grey man. Move away from these places. Remember, guys, okay? Try and keep just if you forget everything else, then you want one test to become the grey man. Don't start eyeballing people, right? Try and become psychologically invisible. Now, the goal of this is for people to see you but not notice you. So, you walk past someone, they see you, but they don't really notice you. Should they glance at, if they glance at you, they forget you immediately. There's a scene on, it's one of the Ocean's movies. I don't know which one it is. It's one of the Ocean's movies. And I think it's Matt Damon. And the guy's talking to him. He's saying, no, you need to be likable but forgettable. So, anyway, that's kind of what it is. You need to conceal any kit and equipment you've got. You might be carrying food, water, medical supplies, cash, whatever. If you're wearing one of those huge backpacks, all right, you are gonna be identified absolutely instantly. Listen, and being a grey man, you've got to understand this, right? It's not about being a coward or hiding or being scared. It's about situational awareness. It's about being capable and ready to act if needed. But you've got to reduce your profile at all costs. If you're in Har Hills, right? If you're in Har Hills and you get approached, it might be worth just letting them rob you. I mean, you don't want to pick a fight, because then these guys are going to get angry. Let that, maybe that's what you need. Maybe you might think, right, I've not got much on me. I'll just give it them. I don't want to fight. It's not about being, cowardly. Being the grey man is about blending in and achieving your goals. If your goal is to leave, is to evacuate the city, you're having pitched battles with people on the streets. That's not a good thing. Your goal is to leave the city. Excuse me. So in short, there's so many things you can talk about. I could probably do, I'm gonna change the title to this, and I'll put this as Urban Survival 1.0, and then I'll continue with this because there's so many considerations. In short, in urban survival, urban chaos, people who are most likely to operate freely are those who operate unnoticed, therefore safely. And that is I guess that's like the essence of becoming the grey man. Nobody notices you. Oh woman, the grey woman. Nobody notices you. You move freely. When I used to operate in in Baghdad, you can go one of two ways. You can operate in a local taxi. You're driving it, obviously. You're not paying somebody. You can operate in a local taxi, driving around, maybe two vehicles unmarked, or you can have 6 brand new, shiny, black SUVs, Suburbans. You can have 6. Say you've got, right, who's going to get noticed more? 4 guys driving in 2 taxis that are unmarked and they're wearing local clothes, or 6 vehicles, or 6 shiny new Suburban, who makes Suburban? Chevrolet Suburbans with armored plating and everybody inside. It's got Nomex combat suits on. They've all got M4s. Who's gonna get noticed? Who's gonna get into more trouble? So I think I'm going to start to close this down, guys. Okay. I just wanted to jump on here, right? I just wanted to jump on here and do a little bit of a talk about urban survival and try and focus it on the United Kingdom. Now, urban survival, it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic, and it is so nuanced. It's so nuanced. It's like, oh, Sean said do this. Yeah, you've got to understand the context, right, of why do that. I didn't even mention shelter in place, finding water, finding food. I mean, what do you do in those circumstances? So urban survival, it's a huge topic. It's very nuanced. However, I do think it's very relevant to the United Kingdom. I think it's very relevant, and the things I spoke about there, sat in traffic, how to react if you're in traffic jams, get out of them as quickly as possible, and becoming the grey man. I do think there are 2 things that are really important, because we've already seen these things happen in the United Kingdom. We've already seen cities turn to chaos. And if you think, for example, if you live in Birmingham, if you live in the West Midlands, you could argue that the police are not coming to help you. You could absolutely argue that, because it does look like the West Midlands police have already been subverted. Sorry, guys, I'm just scrolling up to these comments. Who you gonna leave behind? Stand firm. Listen, guys, right? I get it, right? I totally get it. Everybody, everybody's talking about fighting. I'm talking about evacuating, all right? I'm talking about evacuating. So I'm gonna say evacuate, right? I'm going to say evacuate the cities, and that's what I'm talking about. That's literally what I'm talking about now. Donna is saying, Andy, you could, yes, but what if water cash will be lost for a short period of time? Then it's worthless. Band again is saying, have a plan B, a plan A and a plan B. Think, now, where would I go if and when you leave the city aimlessly? Yeah, you know what? You need that direction, right? And this all comes down to planning. And I guess there's an acronym. There's an acronym in, what is it? PACE, P-A-C-E. And it's not PACE as do, because that's something else. So it's primary, alternative, contingency, and emergency. So if you guys remember that acronym, PACE, P-A-C-E. So if you're doing like emergency contingency planning or something, there's an acronym called PACE, P-A-C-E. So primary, your ideal method, your ideal plan, your ideal location, the most efficient way, the most reliable, whatever, the best. That's your primary. What do we want to do? Right, PACE, right. This is our primary. This is our alternative. So this is your plan B now. Your alternative is yours, it's your plan B. It's a solid backup. It's just as good. Maybe even in some circumstances, it's better. But, it should be equally as good, right? Or, a little bit less good. So you have primary alternative. Then you have contingency. So this is like a fallback. So it's like, right, if my primary and secondary don't work, then I've got my contingency. And then you have your emergency or last resort. So whatever that is, right, we're going to head north and we're going to go that way. If we can't go that way, we're going to head east. If we can't, we're going to, You know, the last case scenario is we're going to have to just, you know, fight our way through with our toothpicks or whatever. But that's PACE, P-A-C-E. Sean's off to Texas. I'm not off to Texas. Although I don't know. I was looking at houses in Texas the other day. I was looking at houses, like if you go onto, what's the website? Zillow. If you go onto Zillow and do like an anyway, I was looking around Austin, and like outside Austin, there's some like honestly, like we get absolutely fleeced in the United Kingdom for housing prices. For the price of houses in the United Kingdom, it's absolutely ridiculous, guys. It is. Andy is saying police are not helping you now, the feckers. Yeah, I do think people need to, especially in the United Kingdom, you need to hope for the best but plan for the worst. If we take the West Midlands Police, and understand that West Midlands Police were fabricating evidence to appease certain communities. If you accept that, which I think it's it's nobody's denying that, then you've got to consider what else and who else. Mr. Mister is saying you should be looking at house prices in Cleethorpes. I've had a massive look at Cleethorpes. I've looked where to put roadblocks. I've looked where to put tents. I've looked where to store where masses of people can stay. Honestly, the more I look at Cleethorpes, it just gets better. So if you guys think of Cleethorpes, you've got like miles and miles of open countryside around it, and that would be perfect to put tented cities, like, you know, to host I guess refugees. It would be, wouldn't it, with refugees? Danielle Tuds is saying the policers don't have the resources and they have families at home like everyone else. Absolutely. You know, we can't you can't rely on the police. That's the reality. As Danielle is perfectly put in there, you know, the police have their own families. They don't have the resources to go to everywhere. And even if they brought the military in, the military would only be there to secure these critical infrastructure, basically. The military would only be brought in to secure the critical infrastructure. Right. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to start to close this down now because I need to jump back on. At 8 o'clock. So the crux of this video has been, I've been talking about urban survival in the UK. I've tried to focus this as much as I can on the United Kingdom and the most likely, scenarios, basically. Now, these things are huge topics. You know, they're absolutely huge topics. And I don't want anyone to think that this is, anything other than an interest period, right? Just with some talking points and some thought points for you guys to consider. Nothing certainly online. Nothing subsidizes an actual training course where you go away. I don't even know if there's any. I don't think there will be in the UK, but nothing subsidizes you guys for actual training and real world training. Now, I don't want to really go too deep into if this happens, that happens, because these things are too nuanced. For example, should you leave the city? Well, I would absolutely leave the city all the time, right? Like, for me, it's like, yeah, absolutely, I'd leave the city. I don't live in a city, but if I did, I'd want to get out of the city. Now, there may be circumstances where you may think, right, you know what? I can't actually leave the city. I have to stay here. So if I say do this, then it becomes I could be giving you the wrong advice, and I don't really want to give people the wrong advice. I want to give people like talking points for considerations. So I do think that would be the most likely scenario that you guys are going to find yourselves in. You're leaving a city, you're leaving the city, you're trying to get out, you're trying to evacuate, whatever, and you find yourself in heavy traffic and you need to get out of there as quickly as possible. It's kind of, I do think that's going to happen a lot more than people think. Like I said, like earlier on or yesterday or whatever, we were talking about leaving the city, and somebody said, as soon as these incidents happen, everybody's going to try and leave the city and it's going to be chaos and carnage. It really isn't. You will have a window. You will have, say, 3 hours. So we talked about trigger events, right? We talked about like mass events, like what happened in Southport. If that happens again, there'll be riots. There'll be riots again in the United Kingdom, worse than they were last time. That's inevitable. That may be the push that push people, the little push that breaks people into civil war. But there will be a soak period while people are trying to gather the news, right? While people are trying to finish what's happening. Don't forget, if these things happen, whatever time these things happen, there's going to be people at work. There's going to be people out of the house. People are going to come back, find out the news, get angry, talk to each other, and then they're going to decide to do something. That takes time. In that time, that's when you need to be getting out. So 3 hours, very safe. I would say get out of the city. 6 hours, you could start to have problems on the streets. 12 hours, 24 hours, that's when you start to have to think about, right, okay, maybe it's not the right time to leave the city now. Maybe I need to stay in, maybe I need to stay in the city. I think Har Hills, I think that was going crackers for like a week. I'm pretty sure that was like a week or something. Can you imagine if you get caught in there? Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to close this down now. I am. Jess is saying, if you have a go bag for all the family, extra petrol or whatever emergency stuff in your car blankets. Right, guys, I am going to close this down because I'm going to be back on very shortly. I'm going to be back on at 8. I'll be back on at 8. We'll be talking about what's been happening in the United Kingdom. But apart from that, ladies and gentlemen, keep yourself safe. We're in for wild times. We're in for a wild ride. And I'll see you guys. I hope you're all going to be on at 8. And I'll see you later.